Good morning all. Myself Tanveer Rastogi, Department of Computer Science and Engineering from World College of Technology and Management, Gurugram. Today's topic is operating system, the processes and its scheduling. Now come to the point, what is process? There are two terms named as active and passive things. Passive is what which is not running right now. So the program is something that we can say is in passive entity, but what is running right now is called the active content of that particular program. So the program which is currently running, or the part of the program which is currently running, is called the process. As the first line suggests, an operating system executes a variety of programs that run as a process. Process is a program in execution. Program execution must progress in a sequential manner, no parallel execution of the instruction of a single process. There are multiple parts of a process exist. Process have text section, program counter, stack, data section and heap. Process in memory. Process have four parts. One is text, another one is data, then heap and then stack. The text is what the code, basic code of a particular program is called the text. Data is having what are the variables that are used in the program are called the data. In heap we have dynamic allocation variables which are going to be entered by the user are come under the heap, and in this stack we have the global variable that are used for the program for running. So these are the things that are used for the process to be in the memory. This is the memory layout of a program: the text, then initialized data, the uninitialized data, and then the global variables. Now next part is the process state. Process have 5 states. The first one is called the new, and then running, then waiting, ready and terminate state. What is new state? New state is the state when the program is being created. When a newly fresh program creates is called the state new. When all the required resources are allocated to that particular process, that it become ready for the execution, and that state changes into the running state. Next is called waiting state. Waiting state is the state when there is an IO coming for any process, then process has to wait for some time to be again into the ready queue. That state is called the waiting state. Next is called the ready state. Ready state is the state where the process is ready but not assigned the CPU yet. The process has to be wait into the ready queue before the execution. Next is the terminate state. Terminate state is called as the finish and the last state of a process. In the termination state, when all the required processing has to be done by the CPU, then process exits the system and it came into the termination state. This is the diagrammatical representation of the process state, where we can say the first state where the process start is called the new. After new, we done an operation called the admitted operation, and then process changes into the ready state. After ready state, there are running state. When there is a scheduler dispatch, then after scheduler dispatch, the CPU is allocated to the process who is waiting into the ready queue, and it start running. A process never run for the whole time because there are many interrupt and IO states exist in the lifetime of a process. So whenever an interrupt came up, the running states changes to the ready state, and whenever there is a IO came up, then running state came to the waiting state. From waiting, it's again after the IO completion, process changed to the ready state, and then again it wait for the scheduler dispatch for the running. This is the life cycle of a process. After the process goes with the multiple cycle of this particular phenomena, then completion of work has to be done, and exit system call exists for the termination of the process. So this is the whole process state diagram which explains how a process lives is own life cycle from new to terminate. This is the PCB called as process control block. Process control block is required to hold the processing of a process. As we know, process doesn't goes in a single shot, process is running in bipart, like there is a CPU cycle and the IO cycle. Whenever a CPU cycle closed and an IO cycle comes, then process states has to be logged, so that whenever again the process starts, it starts by the where it ends in the previous cycle. So to log all these activities of a process, we need PCB called as process control block or task control block. As you can see, in process control block, we have a number of entries called as process state. Process state shows in right now our process is in which state, whether it's running or waiting. Program counter shows the instruction which is next going to be executes. CPU registers have the entry of the data. Scheduling information shows what are the different scheduling criteria we are using for the process to allocate. Then memory management information and accounting informations are there, which are required to run a process. After having all the processes we are having in the ready queue, we need process scheduling to schedule these processes into a timeline. So there are different type of scheduling queues like ready queue, wait queue. Ready queue, all the process reside into the main memory to be ready for the executions. And wait queue, the process are waiting for the IO to be complete in the waiting queue. This is the process scheduling ready queue. Ready queue connected to the CPU directly. Whichever process wants to execute, it's entered from the ready queue, and after the scheduler dispatch, it goes to the CPU, and then if the processing is done, it's terminate. Otherwise, if a IO comes, time slice expired, child process created or an interrupt created, then process has to wait in their respective queue and again assign to the ready queue. So basically, to execute a process has to be in the ready queue, and for the further processing it can wait into the different type of queues like the IO wait queue, child termination queue or the interrupt wait queue. CPU schedulers. CPU schedulers are required to change the state of a process from running to wait, running to ready or waiting to ready. There are two types of scheduling, primitive and non-primitive scheduling. Primitive scheduling are those scheduling in which process preempt itself and allow another process to get in. Whereas in non-primitive scheduling, once a CPU is allocated to a process, the process has to run for all of its burst time and then it's terminate. This is a dispatcher. Dispatcher is a module that gives control of CPU to the process selected by the scheduler. It involves context switching, switching to user mode or jump to a proper location. As the diagram shows, firstly P0 is executing. After execution, it save its state into the PCB 0. Then PCB 1 want to execute, so it restored its state from the PCB 1 and then it start executing. So the gap between the two executing process is called the dispatch latency. Scheduling criteria. Scheduling criteria basically needs to determine which scheduling is good for us to implement and which is not good for us. So to decide between the different scheduling, which one is better, which one is good and which one is best, we need a few pointers. So the pointers are CPU utilization. CPU utilization is the time for which the CPU is kept busy and not sit idle. Second is throughput. Throughput is the time of the completion of a process per unit of time. So throughput basically decides ki the process is executing for in a unit time how many processes are executing. Turnaround time is the completion time of a process, ki how much time it taken by a process to complete. Next is waiting time. Waiting time is the time for which a process waits into the ready queue to be executed. And this is the main criteria of CPU scheduling, because if waiting time is much higher, then the scheduling is not good, and if the waiting time is low, then scheduling can be good or can be best. Next is response time. Response time is the time when the first response came up. Like in primitive scheduling, we are processing the process in the parts. So when the first response came up is the time of the response. Here come with the first scheduling called the FCFS. FCFS is named as first come first serve scheduling. In the first come first serve scheduling, we have different processes like P1, P2, P3 along with their burst time. Burst time is the time for which the process has to be there allocated the CPU. So for P1 process we need 24 millisecond of time of CPU. For P2 we required 3 millisecond of time, and for P3 we required 3 millisecond of time. To schedule a particular process, we need to have a Gantt chart. Gantt chart is a chart which shows the timeline of a process. It starts from the index 0, and as FCFS says, the first come first serve, which process came first has to be run first. So at the time 0, P1 process came for the processing or allotted the CPU, and it run for the whole full time of the 24 millisecond. As it's a non-primitive scheduling, so CPU is allocated for the whole burst time. Next, P2 has to came as P1 has done its process, so next the process which is allocated the CPU must be P2, and P2 allocated the CPU at the time of 24. It done it processing for 3 milliseconds, so 24 plus 3 turns into 27. So the P2 process has completed its time at 27. At 27 P2 terminate itself, and the next process which came into the existence is called the P3 process. So P3 process starts by 27, it's run for again 3 milliseconds as given here in the burst time. So we add 27 plus 3 and the time will be 30 milliseconds. So this is the Gantt chart. In this Gantt chart we explained how a process is allotted its time units. Now we need to calculate the waiting time for the P1 process. So P1 process comes into the ready queue at the 0th millisecond, and it's allocated the time, operating system at 0th. So waiting time for the P1 will be 0 millisecond. Now P2 came at the same time 0. The arrival time for all the process P1, P2, P3 is 0. So P0 came at the 0 and allocated to the processor at 0. So waiting time will 0. P2 arrive at the time 0 but allocated the CPU at the time 24. So it wait for 24 millisecond into the ready queue for the allocation of a resource or a processor. Now come the turn of P3. Again P3 came at the time of 0 and it's allocated the CPU at the time 27. So P3 waits totally 27 millisecond in the ready queue for the processing. Now it's time to calculate the average waiting time. As we all know, to calculate the average we need to sum up the individual waiting time divided by the number of process. So it is 0 plus 24 and plus 27, which is the waiting time of the P1, P2 and P3. Now we need to divide it by the total number of processes, which are 3, P1, P2 and P3, and it comes out to be 17 milliseconds. So this is the average waiting time of the processes in the first come first serve scheduling. So as we can say, 17 millisecond is a large time which a process averagely spend in the ready queue to be run or to be executed. So FCFS is not a good scheduling because the average waiting times turned out to become large enough. As I explained, FCFS is not a good scheduling algorithm. So by the example we can check the same thing. Now I have changed the FCFS pattern. First the process that came is P2, the next that process came is P3, and the last the process came is P1. Now Gantt chart start from 0. The first process that came is the P2 process, which run for the entire burst time, which is 3. So on the timeline it's from 0 to 3. The next process which is came up is P3. The burst time of P3 is again 3. So it start by 3 and added 6, 3 plus 3. The next process which is came up is P1. P1 start at 6 and run for the entire lifetime of the 24 milliseconds. So it came out to be 30. So this is the Gantt chart. Now we came to the waiting part. P1 process waits for how much time in the ready queue is the time 6, because the process came at 0th, arrival time for all the process is 0. It came at the 0 and it's allocated the CPU at the 6. So the waiting time for the P1 is completely 6. For P2 came again at 0 because arrival time is 0 and it's allocated the CPU at the time 0. So the waiting time for P2 is become 0. Now the next is P3. P3 came again at 0 and allocated the resources at 3. So the waiting time for P3 is 3. Now to calculate the average waiting time, it's 6 plus 0 plus 3 and divide by 3, it came out to be 3 milliseconds. So just by changing the flow of the processes, like in first example we are taking P1, P2, P3, and in the second example we are taking P2, P3 and P1. Just by changing the flow, there is a major and drastic change into the waiting time. In first example it came 17 milliseconds and in the second example it came out to be 3 milliseconds. So FCFS doesn't provide any suitability for the processes that are shorter or that are having higher priority. That's why we came up to the conclusion that FCFS is not a good scheduling algorithms and it suffers from the convoy effect. Convoy effect, Hindi meaning is kafila. Under kafila we can explain, if a slower process is moving ahead, then all the process behind that particular process has to be get delayed. So the total system get delayed by a certain amount of time. So FCFS suffers with the convoy effect, the shortest process behind the long process.